Imagine having two minds inside one head, two consciousnesses, each with its own will, its own thoughts, and yeah, sometimes its own opinions. Sounds like science fiction, right? But it's not. This is the true story of real-life split-brain patients, people whose brains were physically divided and who became the living key to understanding consciousness itself. Let's break it down. The human brain is one of the most complex and fascinating organs in the body, responsible for everything we think, feel, and do. But, did you know that it's actually divided into two main parts? These are called hemispheres, and each one has its own unique functions and specialties. Your brain is divided into two hemispheres, left and right. The left hemisphere is often associated with logic, language, and analytical thinking, while the right hemisphere is linked to creativity, intuition, and spatial awareness. Despite their differences, these two sides usually work together seamlessly, communicating constantly to help you navigate the world. They're connected by a thick band of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. This structure acts as a bridge, allowing millions of messages to pass back and forth between the hemispheres every second. Without it, the two sides of your brain would be like two computers unable to share data. It's like the internet cable between your two brain halves, allowing them to share information. This connection is crucial for tasks that require both sides of the brain to work together, like reading, recognizing faces, or even tying your shoes. But what happens when that cable is cut? Imagine suddenly losing the ability for your brain's two halves to communicate. This is what happens in a split brain procedure, a rare but dramatic surgery. In the 1960s, doctors treating severe epilepsy discovered that severing the corpus callosum could stop life-threatening seizures. For patients with uncontrollable epilepsy, this surgery was a last resort. After the operation, patients survived. On the surface, they even seemed normal, able to talk, walk, and interact just like before. But then, scientists started running tests. They wanted to know if anything had changed beneath the surface, in the way these patients thought or perceived the world. That's when things got weird. The results of these experiments revealed strange and unexpected behaviors, showing just how important the connection between our brain's hemispheres really is. Enter Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga. These neuroscientists ran experiments with split-brain patients, starting with a simple idea. Because the left and right hemispheres control opposite sides of the body and visual field, they could test what each side of the brain could do. They had patients stare at a dot. Then, they flashed an image to just the left or right side of their visual field, meaning only one brain hemisphere would see it. When the image appeared on the right, the left brain saw it, and the patient could say, "spoon." But if it appeared on the left, the right brain saw it, and the patient said, "nothing." Yet when asked to point to what they saw with their left hand, they correctly picked the spoon. One side of their brain knew, but couldn't talk. The other side could talk, but didn't know. It didn't stop there. The story of split-brain patients only gets stranger the deeper you look. When surgeons first performed the operation to sever the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of nerves connecting the two hemispheres of the brain, they hoped to relieve severe epilepsy. But what they discovered was something no one could have predicted. A mind divided, yet somehow still whole. In some patients, each hemisphere could have different preferences, almost as if two separate personalities were living side by side, each with its own likes, dislikes, and intentions. Imagine waking up one day to find that your left hand wants to do one thing, while your right hand insists on doing the opposite. For example, one hand might start buttoning up your shirt in the morning, moving with purpose and precision, as if it knows exactly what it wants. But then, without warning, the other hand could reach over and start unbuttoning it, undoing all the work, as if it has a mind of its own. This tug-of-war can play out in the most mundane moments, turning simple tasks into a silent battle between two wills. Or picture this. One hand reaches out for an object on the table, a pen, a cup, maybe a snack, seemingly acting on impulse. Meanwhile, the person's conscious mind, or at least the part that can speak, insists they don't want it at all. The hand moves anyway, as if driven by a hidden agenda, leaving the patient confused and sometimes even frustrated by their own body's rebellion. In one particularly memorable case, a patient suddenly burst out laughing during a psychological test, catching everyone in the room off guard. The laughter seemed spontaneous, almost involuntary, as if it bubbled up from somewhere deep inside. When the experimenters asked why, the patient's speaking hemisphere, the side of the brain that controls language, offered a simple explanation. "You guys are funny." But the truth was far more mysterious. In reality, the experimenter had just flashed an embarrassing photo to the patient's non-verbal right hemisphere, the side that can't speak, but still feels and reacts. The left hemisphere, unaware of what the right had seen, tried to make sense of the laughter, inventing a reason on the spot. So, was that laughter really the patient's own, or was it the voice of someone or something else hidden within the same skull? The question lingers, unsettling and profound. It seemed that each hemisphere had its own consciousness, its own way of experiencing the world, and even its own sense of humor. The left and right sides of the brain could process information independently, sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing, but always aware in their own unique ways. Each side had its own sense of self, its own desires, and sometimes its own secrets. The boundaries of identity, once thought to be clear and solid, suddenly seemed blurry and uncertain. In a very real way, these patients had two minds in one skull, two centers of awareness, coexisting in a single body. Their experiences challenge everything we think we know about consciousness, identity, and what it truly means to be a single person. So what is consciousness really? It's a question that has fascinated philosophers, scientists, and everyday people for centuries. Is it simply the experience of being aware, or is there something deeper going on inside our minds? When you pause to reflect on your own thoughts or notice the world around you, what exactly is happening in your brain to create that sense of you? Is consciousness a single, unified thing? Or is it more like a collaboration between separate systems in the brain, each with their own roles and perspectives? For a long time we assumed our minds were seamless, but new research suggests it might be more complicated than that. The famous split brain experiments really shook our understanding of the self. When the connection between the two hemispheres of the brain is severed, it's almost as if two separate minds emerge, each with its own thoughts, perceptions, and even preferences. This discovery forced scientists to rethink what it means to be a single, unified person. Are you just the sum of your parts, or is there something more that ties all those parts together? If your brain can be divided and still function, does that mean your sense of self is just an illusion created by the brain's wiring? And if your brain can be split into two minds, what does that say about free will, or even the idea of a soul? Are we truly in control of our actions, or are we just passengers along for the ride, with different parts of our brain making decisions behind the scenes? Some researchers believe the left brain is constantly weaving a narrative, a kind of internal storyteller that tries to make sense of everything we do and experience. This narrative helps us feel like a single, coherent person, even when our actions are driven by processes we don't fully understand. Sometimes this storyteller even explains actions it didn't initiate, filling in the gaps with stories that make sense to us, even if they aren't true. It's as if our brains are constantly working to keep the illusion of a unified self alive. In split-brain patients, that narrative can be completely wrong. One side of the brain might act without the other knowing why, and the storyteller just invents a reason after the fact. This shows how fragile and constructed our sense of self really is. So what's really driving your choices? Is it truly you, or is it more like a committee in your head, with different voices and systems negotiating behind the scenes? The mystery of consciousness is far from solved, but one thing is clear. Our minds are even stranger and more complex than we ever imagined. Split-brain patients showed us that consciousness isn't one thing, it's a collection of processes, a fragile, fascinating illusion created by billions of neurons working together. So the next time you make a decision, ask yourself, who really decided? Thanks for watching. If this blew your mind, hit like, subscribe, and check out our next video, The Man Who Survived 2 Atomic Bombs. See you next time.